All right, I think we might have started here. Hello, everybody. Today is Thursday, 11/11 on Veterans Day. Welcome. We are here at office hours. My name is Heather Cox, and with me today are my wonderful co-hosts. I'll pass it to you, Steph.
Hey, everybody. Stephanie Stevens.
Hi, Victoria Dean.
Gary Chandler.
Andrea Singrio.
And we are excited to have Stacy Law from the Microsoft Whiteboard team. Very excited. We love Whiteboard here at Microsoft. Our team that's on the call loves it. So she's going to give us some updates, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. So Stacy, we're going to turn our stuff off, and we're going to turn it over to you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Heather. Thanks for the intro. So as you know, Heather just said, I am Stacy Law. I'm a product manager on the Microsoft Whiteboard team. I do have a few of my colleagues here with me, Ashani, Shweta, and I think Swami's here as well, who are going to help me field any questions in the chat. As I can see, there's a very lively chat, so that's great. And then also when we get to the demo later on in this presentation, they're also going to help me demo some of the more collaborative features we have in Whiteboard, so we'll get to see some of that as well. And so with all the talk about, PowerPoint Live, I decided to also try out PowerPoint Live. And so I hope you can see the presentation there. If not, just give me a shout. All right. Well, actually, before we get into the slides, what I did want to talk about is what I'm going to be doing in the next half hour. So in this next half hour, I'm going to do two things. So for the folks on the call who don't have as much experience with Whiteboard yet, I'll be giving a brief overview of the product. And how our customers are using the app right now, so you get a sense of that, context. And then after that, hopefully that'll only take about 15 minutes. And then after that, I'll be sharing a quick demo of our latest release that was shipped a little over a month ago. So you can see some of those shiny new features right here. But first, before we get into all of that, some basics. So the Whiteboard app serves a lot of users, all users, in fact, enterprise, education, and consumer users. And it comes for free with your Office 365 license. So you don't have to pay extra for it or anything like that. You can access it in multiple ways. So the first way is through the web browser. So if you type whiteboard.microsoft.com in the address bar, you'll be able to access our web app there. You can also download the app through any of the stores like Windows, iOS, or Android stores. And then lastly, if you use Teams, which it sounds like a lot of you already do, you can open Whiteboard through the share tray when you're in a meeting. Or if you're not in a meeting, you could add Whiteboard as a tab app in your chat or in your channel. So I know that's a lot of information to remember, but don't worry, I'll send you a link to our cheat sheet at the end of the presentation, so you have all that information in front of you. Okay, so now that all the basics are out of the way, let's get going here. So some context that I think you're all acutely aware of: hybrid learning is here to stay. Classrooms are going digital, and teachers and students are now much more tech savvy than ever before. So given this backdrop of digital transformation in the classroom, it's important that we have easy to use tools that make learning accessible and engaging for everyone. And we believe that Whiteboard is one such tool, and the tool that will improve student outcomes, especially in this hybrid world. So how does Whiteboard do that? How does Whiteboard improve student outcomes? Well, first, we know that one of the biggest struggles our teachers have is to keep their students engaged in learning. The Whiteboard app empowers teachers to create visually rich and engaging content that keeps students' attention. So it also gives students different and very inclusive ways to interact, so they could choose how to express themselves in a way that suits them the best. So for instance, students who are more shy can use things like reactions to communicate. Those are just basically stickers that you put on the board. While students who feel more comfortable expressing their thoughts might use something that is a little more engaging, like text boxes or sticky notes, or even inking to do the same, to express themselves. So many different ways that people can sort of interact and express themselves on the board. Secondly, Whiteboard is the tool to use when there's thinking work involved and thinking work to be shown. So examples of this are things like group projects, brainstorming, and ideation work. So anything that requires some sort of sausage making step in the middle. It's also true for things like conceptual instruction. So, whenever it's important for students to see like something step by step or a dynamic explanation of a concept, And this is also true for formative assessments. So teachers have many times told us how they've used Whiteboard to, for instance, watch how students are writing and forming letters on the board, or how they're thinking through a math problem so that they could provide more timely feedback. So all these things I include in that thinking bucket. That is super useful to have a whiteboard with you when you're doing these types of activities. And then finally, we know that class time is super precious, and that's why we want you to spend as little time as possible fiddling with, opening and closing apps and moving windows from one place to another. Our plan is to integrate Whiteboard into places that you are making and using, like doing your instruction. And right now, what that means is a lot of integrations with Teams, but in the future, that can mean, a lot of other things. Okay, so here's a quick slide just describing how the features in Whiteboard support the 3 points that I had from the previous slide. So increasing student engagement, enabling formative assessment and group work, and streamlining class experiences and maximizing learning time. I'm not going to go through these features here because we'll be doing a demo in a few minutes. So there's just, just a quick list of things that sort of support the points that I had before. And then here, just another super quick slide to say, hey, we're here for everyone. We're not just for K through 12. We're not just for higher education or remote learning or corporate training. We're really here for equal opportunity learners. Okay, so a few examples of how our education customers are currently using Whiteboard. So the most important thing here to note is that Whiteboard can be used in multiple contexts. It's not just an app that you use when everyone is together, for instance, like in a classroom or in a meeting. It's also an app that students can use on their own time. So for instance, students can use it for doing group projects asynchronously. So when they're not together at the same time, but they're still working on the same board, or when they're doing homework assignments at home. So as you'll see in a minute in the upcoming slides, you'll also see that whiteboards can also be used for long-running tasks. So things that projects that span across many days or weeks or even months. So things like collecting important dates or announcements or even celebrating progress throughout the year. So these are all the different types of things that you could use Whiteboard for. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into 5 different scenarios just to give you a little sense of how teachers are using our boards. And then also there's some pretty pictures that you can also use to give you some ideas of how to use Whiteboard. So the first thing that you see here is for visually engaging lessons. So this is a very common use case for our teachers. You can use Whiteboard in a very ad hoc fashion. So you could, quickly bring up the whiteboard in a lesson. You could simply use a pen tool. You could, draw some stuff on it. You could write some math formulas on it. You can add some text boxes, maybe some sticky notes to express your points. That's totally fine. And a lot of our teachers use Whiteboard for that in that use case. For some teachers, they find that to get the most out of Whiteboard, what they would do is they would add different types of content and media onto the boards to make their lessons more visually engaging. So for instance, they might add slides from a PowerPoint deck or pages from a PDF file or from a textbook or something like that. They might also add images from the computer, or they might even draw some diagrams to aid in their explanations. So all those things are helpful in keeping the student's attention. And then also, since the whiteboard is spatial, the canvas is spatial, you can also move and jump around easily from one topic to another without needing to follow a linear path or flow through your lesson. Of course, you can always do that if you wish to. But what we found is that in some other apps, for instance, PowerPoint, you have to move through slide by slide, one by one. And there's definitely like a place for that. But with Whiteboard, what you could do is you could simply zoom around or pop around from like one area of the board to another super quickly and just go where the conversation takes you. Okay, so another great use of Whiteboard is encouraging class participation. So by using graphic organizers, handouts, and templates to organize the discussion, you can really get the most out of that lesson. Students can do things like, add text boxes, sticky notes, reactions, and ink to express their thoughts. And then also for those of you who are worried about distractions during lessons, there's a read-only toggle that can quickly turn editing permissions on and off on the board. So you could do something like, turn off editing, explain the exercise, and then turn it on briefly to allow some sort of collaboration, and then just sort of like toggle it on and off. So that's also what some of our teachers do. Okay, the next scenario here is group projects and brainstorming. So for collaborative work, Teams already has a concept of breakout rooms, which is really great way to like for students to organize and to separate into different groups to discuss specific topics. In those cases, we already have whiteboards that are available for each breakout room to brainstorm on. So that's great. They could use it there. But students can also use whiteboard outside of group projects outside of the classroom. And so what they could do is they could create a share link from the board and invite their classmates to their board. So you don't actually have to be in the same meeting to work together on the board. And that actually brings me to the next one here around collaborating at different times. So if I expand on that last point some more, whiteboard can be used super effectively in real-time meetings, but they can also be used outside the classroom and at different times. So in Teams, like I said before, you could add a whiteboard tab to your Teams channel. You could pin it in a prominent place, and this helps everyone in the channel get to the board quickly and to add content to it over a longer period of time. If you're in the web app, so whiteboard.microsoft.com, you can always go back to your board picker and look at all the boards that you have access to, and you can always go back to them outside of Teams meetings and access them and work on them, continue working on them. So our last example today is for study and review. One of the benefits of using a digital whiteboard is that all of your content is digitized and saved in the cloud. And this means that you could reuse your boards across multiple classes, multiple lessons, multiple instances of classes. It also means that you can easily share the content with students as reference material for studying and completing assignments. So students, in this case, can also then add their own flavors to the boards, right, to help them better visualize and to cement that knowledge. Okay, so with that, we just went through a sampling of 5 different ways our customers are using Whiteboard, but there are so many other scenarios out there that we haven't quite discussed. I would love it if you give the app a spin, let us know how you're using it and how you're using it to improve student outcomes, because we always love hearing from our customers. And with that, I thought we could move to the demo, unless anyone had any just quick questions before we moved over to the demo. Nope. All right. Oh, quickly, before I go to the demo, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share my screen now because I do want to show something else. So screen sharing. Okay. If I could just get a few thumbs up to make sure folks are seeing my shared screen here, you should be seeing a PDF file with a cheat sheet. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. How do we get access to that cheat sheet for our teachers?
I'm just going to plop it right here in the chat window so you have access to it right there. So yeah, so just want to show you this, super quick resource that's available for everyone right now. Just go to Microsoft.com and download it. I put the link in the chat. Yeah, it gives some good information about what tools to use and when. So how to create, visually compelling lessons, right? How to, oops, just went through that super fast. How to create smooth interactive lessons, like what tools to use and for when. It talks about how to find Whiteboard and Teams. And then also some other information like helpful templates that you could use for your lessons, and then also where to download the app. So that's super quick, but just go download it from the link, take a look, and feel free to use it for your students, for your colleagues, for yourself. And there you go. And with that, I am just going to pop over to a session of Whiteboard that I have. Okay, so you should be seeing my whiteboard here. All I did was I went to whiteboard.microsoft.com. I opened up a board. I named it the National MS Office Hours because that's the name of this meeting. And then I also have a few other folks here. As you can see, I have a Shani and I have a Shweta here. And once they find me, I'll put a note on the board so that they could find me. Once they do find me, we'll start seeing their collaborative cursors. And so if you have, yeah, there we go. Thanks, Shweta and Ashani. So if you have used Whiteboard before, you'll notice that this is quite a stark change from our app before. We have made the UI a little more clean. We've divided it up a little more so that it's easier to know what to use and when and how. So for instance, the first thing let's talk about is, we now have like an app bar that gives you, the name of the whiteboard. And then we have the share dialog where you could, copy a link and then share it with the folks that you're collaborating with. We also have a settings pane here with different features where you can export your board. The feature here that's interesting that sometimes people find it a little bit hard to find is called format background. So you could come here, you could change the color of your background. A lot of our teachers love this feature because how accessible it makes the board. And so if you have folks with that little hard of seeing, you might find like a different colored background works better, or just using grid lines, graph paper, or anything like that. So I could just make this change right here, and then it automatically saves. Some of the other things that you'll notice with this new UI is that we've sort of separated out the ink tools that we have up here that you see on the top with basically the creation, what we call the creation tools, or things that you can insert on the board. So if you've used other Office apps before, OneNote, PowerPoint, you'll be familiar with the ink tools here. But some cool new features that we have, now you can save, up to 3 pens here, so that you don't have to constantly keep changing like the colors under one pen. You could just have like 3 different colors here. You could save them and use them quickly. We now have different ink colors, including what we call rainbow and galaxy ink, which is super popular with our education customers. The other cool thing here is I'll show you, if you see this little arrow here, these are ink arrows that we have. So they could be like single-ended ink arrows or double-ended ink arrows. Basically, you just draw a line, and then we draw the arrow for you. So this really helps when you're like pointing out things during a lesson, and it just makes it easier. We have other things here. So if I include like a text box here, say hello everybody. Oops. Oh, can't type. Now I could do like things like highlight, right? Which I don't think we had before. Erase, I think most people are familiar with. Like if I ink, I could just quickly erase things on the board. And then lasso select. I could select multiple things on the board and then move it. So these are just some, quick examples of things that we could do. Laser pointer is also something that you could do in collaborative situations. This feature is only available to customers who are on OneDrive for Business. We are migrating our backend over to OneDrive for Business. And so eventually all customers will be on OneDrive, and then all customers will have access to that laser tool. But right now, if you go to whiteboard.microsoft.com, you might not see that just yet, but it is coming. So don't worry, you will see it soon. So some of the other new things that we have, if you look over here, we've always had notes and texts, but then some of the things we added, if you haven't seen Whiteboard recently, is this shapes menu. And so, being able to add a circle here, change the color of it, change the border color or have no border at all. All these things are made super easy by this menu. It used to be that, what you had to do was you had to like draw a circle with your mouse or with touch or with pen, and then we automatically detect that it's circle, turn into a circle for you. Well, you can still do that as you just saw, but we also have a menu here to make it easier for mouse and keyboard users. Talking about keyboard, we actually have some pretty cool features around keyboards. So we have some shortcut keys, like if you hold down the space bar, it turns into a pan tool, so you don't have to worry about messing up the board, right? And then, so we also have copy and paste. So I could copy and then paste it on the board and do that all through keyboard shortcuts. Or you can also do it here through the context menus on each of the objects, right? And some of the other cool things about like creating boards, like you could add things like images and templates. You could add reactions so that, the students in your class, have some simple, lightweight ways, and even yourself has some simple, lightweight ways to interact with other folks on the board. What I did here was I did add a bunch of stuff to the bottom here on this board, just because I didn't want to have to go through, have you watch me go through all of my documents on my PC. But as you can see here, I inserted, that PowerPoint, that PDF presentation, or that PDF that I sent you a link to. I added all the pages here. You could actually, for PowerPoint slides and PDFs, you could actually pick the slides that you want to add to the presentation, so you don't have to add all of them at once. You can add images. And then one of the really cool features I do want to show off, because I think it's super cool, and Ishani, who's also on the call, had a big part in making this happen, are these things called templates. So if you click on the templates buttons here, there are a ton of templates that are available for you to use. So there's brainstorming templates, problem solving, design and research strategy, all that kind of stuff. There's even a big bucket just for like specifically for education, right? With a lot of the like the handouts and the frameworks that are commonly used by teachers and educators. And so what you do is, you could, grab one of these. I already have the compare and contrast one here, but let's grab the KWL one, and then you could plop it down on the whiteboard, and then instantly have everyone collaborate here at the same time. So super cool. It really helps with, not just, having somewhere to start that is not just a blank page. So yeah, we've got some, and there's games, and yeah, so I just really encourage you to go in here, check it out, and let us know what you think. Let's see, what else? Yeah, so, there are some other features like, if I have like multiple notes here, the ability to move them to the back or move them to the front, right? Gives you a little more control about when you're putting content down on the board, and then how to position them on the board. We can align content on the board. So if I add a white sticky note here, I could align it right next to the other one so that you could get your nice columns and rows if you'd like. And one more thing that I also believe it's new. I've been seeing this for so long that sometimes it's hard for me to remember what's new and what's not. But these notes grids. And so if you want to organize your brainstorms or just your notes better with different colors, what you could do is you could add just a grid of notes of a particular color. And there you go. So some of the things that I already talked about that you will get a little bit later, but maybe not quite now, is that laser pointer is one. The other one are these collaborative cursors, or presence cursors, what we call them. So being able to see where everyone else is on the board, being able to see where students are potentially stuck on, and being able to go over there and help them out. This is definitely something that will be out soon. And so here's just a quick sneak preview of that. Let's see, just looking through my list to see if there's anything else. I think I did go through, most of the things that are new since our last release. Yeah, I don't know, Ashani, Shweta, Swami, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, there was a comment where someone had asked about locking objects on the board. Did mention it's on the backlog. So if there's other features that you're like, I'd love to see, please let us know.
Yeah, locking on the board is definitely an ask that we get quite often. So that is pretty near the top of our backlog right now.
I have a comment real quick about that. I was the one that wrote that question. I know before this update, this wonderful whiteboard update, which I absolutely love, the previous version, the desktop version, did have the ability to lock items. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I was kind of, it's unfortunate that the new one lost that feature. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, definitely. So when we do move everyone over to the new client, one of the things that we use in order to help us figure out what features to move over first is we looked at a lot of the data, a lot of the telemetry data of what was being used. And based off of that, those are the features, like the highest used features are the ones that we moved over first. This doesn't mean that if you don't see it right now, you won't see it in the future, because we're definitely working as quickly as possible to close that gap. And so locking is one of those things that, when we looked at our usage data, it wasn't being used as often, but certainly something that we will be working on to close that gap.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
I think that's typically how Microsoft works, is on analytics of usages, which makes sense, right? So definitely would love to see the lock feature. I think our more powerful users that are very versed in technologies like this are the ones that tend to use features that controls the environment a little more. Mm-hmm. And so there's more users that are using it very ad hoc. Yeah, it's something quick to do. And then you have the power users that like to control that environment a little more.
Yep, absolutely. So the other thing is, on our team, I am the one who does the engagement with the education team. So I am going to put my email and contact information in the chat here. If you have any specific questions or if you'd like to talk to us more, we do have an education advisory council that I do run, and we meet every month to talk about Whiteboard. If you would like to be part of that, please let me know as well. I'm just going to put my info in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me.
Dwayne, do you want to ask your question?
Can I ask two?
Sure.
Question number one is kind of loaded, but when might we expect external meeting participants to be able to whiteboard along with us rather than seeing a sad message that says that they can't and that it's coming soon?
Yeah, so we are working on that. We do have requests for that. I don't know that I could give you the exact date for that right now, but we are actively working on it and it is coming out soon.
Okay, we would love that. And my second question is a little obscure, but we have a few, we refer to them as high flex rooms where we have nice, large multi-touch displays. When is it on your team's radar at all to support multi-touch for the Microsoft Whiteboard app so we could move more than one device or more than one object on the whiteboard or have multiple students messing with stuff on the whiteboard at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, it is something we are considering. We do have a whole team dedicated to touch and how that works. And so, yes, that is something we are considering.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Stephanie, you had your hand up before. Did you have a question too or a comment to add?
I was just going to try to elevate the questions around recording whiteboard features, but it looks like they were taken care of in the chat. So I won't resurface those, but thanks for bringing them to the attention of the product team here, guys. Obviously, you're starting to see here, Stacy and team, like this group is not afraid to give user voice, even though user voice, rest in peace, is not where we can provide that comment. So they're a great group to bring things like this to, and we really appreciate you coming today and sharing these updates. I know from our seat, like everyone, Andrea, Heather, myself, the whole team, we really are excited about these updates and we think they're going to make a big difference for folks in education. So thank you for all the work.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Stacy.
Oh, I was just going to say, I would say just don't worry to, we love hearing feedback, whether it's positive or negative. We work a lot with customers, and so don't be shy. I mean, I know you're all not shy, but feel
not
free
a problem here. Yeah, not a problem here.
Yeah, I think, not only all those education uses, but for ourselves as, I mean, yes, it's amazing for education, certainly, but I mean, all the ways that we can brainstorm with our own internal teams, I think is just fantastic. So I know that there are lots of people looking forward to this recording. To echo Stephanie, thank you, Stacy and team, for that. Love that you had the demo in there for us. And man, I love the cheat sheet. Stephanie's already shared it with our little team. Garrett's tweeting it already. So we are big fans of that. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll stop the recording and thank you guys so much. Thank you, team. And those of you who